Hello and good evening. We're very sorry for the delay. Apologies to all. We were facing some technical issues, but here we are. Welcome to Thespo 23, Dil Fully Dramatic. This session is a part of the Thespo Book Club, a series of discussions where young theatre makers get together with seasoned artists of the field and engage in a dialogue about the books they've written, their journey, and their experiences. Today, we're going to be diving into Dolly Thakore's Regrets None, a memoir of the awe-inspiring life she has led. Dolly Thakore is a veteran theatre actor, best known for the Vagina monologues that's been running for the last 20 years. She's a newscaster, columnist, and casting director who has worked in advertising, communications, and public relations. She is also a staunch social activist, particularly for children and destitute women, and for Citizens for Peace. She is also the national coordinator for the Ladli Media Awards for Gender and Sensitivity. Well, we'll all be taking questions towards the end of the session. So if there is something that you would like to ask Dolly Thakore or anyone on the panel, please feel free to leave your questions in the chat. That being said, Dolly Auntie, it's a pleasure to have you here. To begin with, would you like to read us an excerpt from your book? Please do unmute yourself.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Anushka. Vagina Monologue is not the only play I've acted in. There have been, I think, 50 or 70 others, but it is certainly the latest one, and I'm still acting in it. The other well-known ones, I'm sure if you go through my book, you will find them all there. But let me now read out a piece that does relate to theatre. The first play Alec directed me in was Meera, written by Gurcharan Das, and it was about the Bhakti saint Mirabai. Zafar Hai, the documentary filmmaker, was in it. So were Deena Pathak and Homi Daruwala. I played Udabai, the Rana's sister. Indira Kohli played Meera, and when Indira got married and then pregnant, Nirmala Mathan took over. Alec turned it into a multimedia presentation and production. We performed with a screen as a backdrop. Throughout the show, different images were projected onto the screen. The musicians sat on a platform above the screen. It sounds a bit simplistic now, but bear in mind, this was 1971 and 72. As a director, Alec was detailed, meticulous, exacting. Some might have called him overbearing. I, for one, loved it. He told an actor when to sit, when to stand, how to sit, how to move, how to cross their legs. He wanted cigarettes lit on a certain line, in a certain way. He'd tell you when to flick the ash. He didn't want a page to turn or a leaf to flutter on stage without choreographing it, without having rehearsed it. We were functionaries in his vision because the vision wasn't collaborative. He had no need to share it. You showed up and got told what to do. In contrast, I acted in a play called Suddenly Last Summer, directed by Adi Marzbab. Adi was a genuine polymath, a career newsman, it ran in the family, a writer, a director, a titan of Parsi theatre, and he played several instruments. And he was a keen ventriloquist and magician, a man who wove a unique spell. He also worked across companies and cliches and genres and languages. And no one brought in the audiences the way he did. He used to rehearse in Adi's house on Altamount Road. On the first day of rehearsal, we read the play. Adi listened carefully. Then he addressed us in that deep nasal twang. Okay, tomorrow for rehearsal at 6 o'clock. Everybody learn your lines and come. I froze. With Alec, we read the play over and over, the whole cast. We discussed the script. When we got on the floor, we still have the script in our hand. Every move went into the script. A tiny note in pencil in the margins. Alec would also tell an actor he wanted a line in a particular way, whether he wanted the tone to drop or rise, whether he needed a whisper or he needed anger, all faithfully recorded on the script. Woe betide if you forgot. Alec's temper was legendary. No one seemed to mind, although I'm not sure if it was actually received with as much equanimity as I remember. At that time, he was the emperor of all he surveyed. On the second day, Adi mapped out a vague floor plan in the space. Mostly he just pointed at corners. No chalk or tape or anything. Alec would have had it looking like a crime scene. Imagine there is a bench here and a sofa here, a window here and a door there. You come in from here, and that was it. There were no further instructions. Where to look, how to use hands, when and how to sit, when to stand. It was up to us. I went home and cried. I couldn't do it, I said to Alec. I was disoriented. I felt scared and isolated, left completely to my own devices. Some schools of theatrical thought believe that this is what actually casting is. Find someone you think can play a role and leave them to their own devices. Here, the director is a watchful eye, the first audience member. He is not the autocrat. This is why Adi Marzban productions were as vivid as they were, because he had a room full of fantastic actors who liberated. And because they were free agents, they paid very close attention to what was happening on stage. Their co-actors were likely to do something that would take them by surprise during the show. When it worked, it was utterly magical, and it worked more often than not. A play would start as one thing, and by the end of the rehearsal, the process, it became something else entirely. Mind you, he had some fantastic actors, Vammi and Pilu Dotiwala, Vammi and Vinu Kapadia, Hosi Vasunya, Sherazad Modi, Ruby Patel. They all worked with Adi extensively and were plugged into his particular brand of chaos. It's not for me to say who was better. I think there is merit in both approaches. Adi's method of working made people want to come back again and again. And that was something that you felt when you watched those productions. Alec, on the other hand, played to a larger cross-section of audiences. He also worked across a bewildering range of genre and scale. Man with a lifelong theatrical itch who experimented ceaselessly. He understood spectacle like few others and yet got tagged as someone with a very intellectual approach to the theatre. That gulf, the masses and the classes, and work that caters to everything in between still exists. But it is narrower now than it has been at any other time in my life. Back then, everyone looked down on everyone else. It helped a little that people worked across things. Ronnie Screwvala worked with both Adi and Alec. Likewise, Sabira Merchant and Host. That much for theatre and the two directors that I worked extensively with.
Thank you so much, Dolly Auntie. That was lovely to listen to. So while the book is about your life. You ended up, in a way, archiving a lot of the theater from back in the day. And I think that's been a bit of a gold mine for all the theater makers, emerging theater makers today. What I was wondering, when exactly did you decide that you wanted to chronicle your life?
In 1982, as soon as there was an emotional break in my life, I decided that I have to put it all down, because I was one of the first daring women to make decisions and lead my life the way I wanted. And so I wanted it all manuscripted and written down.
Right. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And so if I may ask, why exactly did it, like, what prompted you to publish it now and finish the book now, since you conceived it that way?
Because when I started it, there was a great deal of emotion, there was a great deal of sorrow, there was a great deal of pain and tears. And having done it in the first month or two, I suddenly realized I had to take charge of my life, and I had to take over earning more money, because I had a son to bring up and I was independent. And fortunately, I never had to stretch my hand to anybody to ask for assignments, but they just poured in. I was on radio. At that time, there was no TV. Or no, TV had just started. And I was on the news. So assignments just came. I was acting in plays. I was writing sometimes 16 and 15 columns a week. So, I was just so busy reviewing Hindi plays, English plays, Marathi plays, Gujarati plays. I have a story to tell. I went to see Dr. Sriram Lagu, was one of the greatest actors we had. And I came a little early, and I'd cast him in Gandhi and I'd cast him in Jinnah. So I had a personal rapport with it. So I walked in to see Natya Samrat, in which he was acting. I arrived a little early, and it was way beyond in Ville Parle or somewhere. In those days, those areas used to be very far away. And I walked in there, and I went backstage. And as soon as he saw me, he uttered a whole line in Marathi. So I turned to him and I said, Lagu sir, stand up and recite, act it out. I'll tell you what you said. So that's how I was a reviewer for Marathi, Gujarati, and of course English and Hindi, which I was fairly familiar with. But there was just so much I did. I wrote my articles sitting at bus stops. I couldn't afford taxis and Uber. There were no Ubers in those days, or cars. So I used to sit and write them at bus stops. And but I worked very hard to come and arrive to where I am now. So I have no regrets. That's why my book is called Regrets None.
Absolutely, and that's been quite inspiring, right from the title. And yes, you've done quite a lot of work throughout. It's been fascinating to read about. What was the process of putting the book together like?
Well, when I started, I hand wrote it. Mm-hmm. Then one waited for a typewriter. Then one waited, and there was just too much of wastage of paper and carbon and fingers getting dirty, etc. And gave it all up and waited. My brother-in-law sent me an electric typewriter. Then when the electric typewriter came, I thought that was easy. But then people began to talk about the computer and Word and all that. And so I kept writing intermittently, but it was all, bits and pieces. So we went ahead and did all that. And by which time I had collected a whole heap of paper. Then I was on the cover of Femina and Outlook and Onlooker and Dignity and Savvy and, all the magazines that wanted women on their cover, I was on it. And so I collected all this material. And many years later, Kwasa said to me, Mama, why don't you write a book? And I said, well, I'm so fed up of all that, and I've got too many things to do. Then he got Arya Lahiri, who I must say is brilliant and became my co-writer in the sense, because I then just poured my heart out to him. He taped it all and he edited it. He's a terrific editor. So he wiped out and 4 pages, which he thought was superfluous in it. But as you can see, the book has been pretty well received. And I'm quite happy with the end result.
And if I may ask, so since the process was a really long one, from when you conceived it up until now, has the way you perceive your life changed?
I've done so many things, Anushka. It's not just one thing. I started being on stage at the age of 5.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first time that I entered on stage, all colored in blue, and I was playing Krishna. And the curtain, this was at an Air Force camp in Palam in Delhi. The curtain opened, my sari opened out, and the women came, the curtain came down, the women came, tidied me up. And when the curtain opened again, a huge applause went up from the audience. That applause is still ringing in my ears, and I love it. I love applause. So it doesn't matter what mistakes you've made in life, what errors you've made in life, pick up yourself and go ahead. And that's what I've done in debates, in elocutions, in declamation contests all over India, into class, into school, into house, into university, into, everywhere. And that's what's seen me where I am today. I'm not scared of anything. Make mistakes. We all make mistakes. But so what? That doesn't mean it's the end of your life. And that is the advice that I want to give to all the people that are listening in and to all young women who want to lead their lives and be brave about it.
Thank you so much for that. In fact, I was just speaking with a bunch of friends of mine, and this is something that we are currently navigating. So it's very, very relevant. Thank you so much for mentioning that. Are there any instances that you've wanted to include in the book that you haven't?
Not one. Not one. Everything is in the book.
Yeah, that takes a lot of courage to just go out and everything.
Fortunately, of course, I am over the hill, so I can afford to do that. Nothing is going to trip me now. But as I said, I've worked with women and children. I've seen what brings them down or what makes them accept themselves as failures. And that is what I want to overcome. And that is where I want to give women and girls and people courage. I don't mean just women, even boys and men and everyone, because it's not that they have any less pain than we have. They equally get hurt. They equally get disappointed in life. Therefore, it's a parallel for both sexes. But go ahead and do what you can. Don't feel bad about anything. Yes, sometimes the decisions are difficult. I mean, for instance, something that I would like to share, my mother and I were never close because I was farmed out when I was 6 years old and I lived with my grandparents who I adored, and I was a terrible child. But my parents didn't like the way I used to be called Ziddi, and my grandparents and all indulged me no end. And my aunt, who's 97 years old and is still alive, she's still here in Andheri. But, so I mean, those are the people I depended upon. As soon as my aunt used to put my hair in ringlets and make me look like Shirley Temple, and I used to go to school. And I came to my parents at the age of 6 in Palam, because my father was in the Air Force and traveling all the time. My mother straightened my hair, oiled it, and made flat. So there was that Shirley Temple delicacy all gone out of the window. But my aunt had instigated and inspired a love for studies and books and devotion and dedication to study and homework. Not that I was bright and brilliant. I never came first, but I was always second and third. And that was enough for me. And so I was very dutifully and obediently attending to everything that was said in school and followed that. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how that just took you from one stride to the next. I never had to worry about the homework because I did attend to homework. Most children don't attend to homework. And that is what puts them back. They don't pay attention in class. Pay attention in class, do your homework, and it makes life so much easier. And most of us shy away from that, And so my mother was not in favor of me because I didn't stitch, I didn't cook, I didn't clean, I didn't cut vegetables, which are the kind of values that mothers want to give their young daughters. And as a result of which, I didn't waste my time on things like that. Do you know that my mother collected, recently I found that out, every elocution, debating speech that I wrote from the age of 14 and 13 till I left home. She had kept a record of all those. Now you can imagine how much dedication she must have had to me to be able to do that, and to think that I didn't appreciate it at that time. And I appreciate it now when she's been gone almost 20 years. But that's what life is. And I was so moved that my mother kept an open house. And if other members of Thespo will bear me out, mine has been an open house always. You can come in any time of the day and night, sleep, eat, be here. It is home, it's open. And I hope some of those qualities have passed on to Pasar. And you will have to bear me out on that. But that's what life has been. And those are the lovely qualities that I imbibe from my surroundings and the people.
Right. And what you mentioned about the open house and the spirit of giving, just in my experience, I've found that I get that a lot within the theater circuit itself. It is a very loving community, I'd like to believe. And since we were talking about your parents and how they were invested in your studies, were they also supportive of you pursuing theater?
I beg your pardon? Yeah, that's right.
Were they also supportive of you pursuing theater?
There is nothing that they dissuaded me from doing. Mm-hmm. My mother encouraged me, but none of them came from a background of theater or literature or academics. Mm-hmm. But they were open to new ideas. And since I wanted to do that, they supported me. Mm-hmm. And they never said no. They allowed me, at the age of 14, 15, when I began to take part in inter-college and inter-university debates, etc. We traveled to places like Nainital, Muzaffarnagar for inter-college, inter-university debates and things. And then the All India Youth Festival, which was held in Talpattura Gardens in Delhi. So they allowed you to do that. And it's amazing how little things like that give you confidence. You're meeting other like-minded people. You're meeting other people from different... And remember that I was an Air Force child. My father was in the Defense Services. So there was no discrimination about caste, color, food, money, richness, size of car, size of house, size of clothes, jewelry. We had none of that at all. And that is the great thing that I learned. The acceptance of everybody, no matter what they are or who they are. Here we have brought up to think, oh, she's too dark, oh, she's too fair, or she has a disability. Well, I'm not even talking about disability over here, but just the disability of not being a Gujarati, Maharashtrian, South Indian, North Indian. We never discriminated against that. We celebrated each other's festivals, we ate each other's food, but that's what the defense services were like.
Well, would you say that the theater in general, or in your experience, has it been a place where there hasn't been much discrimination?
No, the theater was another place which embraced everyone.
Right.
There were times, like Adi Marzban's theater was very predominantly Parsi theater, but not theater group, which was the Alec Padamsi, the Pearl Padamsi theater. And then there came Al-Qazi's National School of Drama, which encouraged people from all over India in every language and every region of the country. And so, theater is a great leveler of everything.
Lovely. Glad to hear that. I'm sure we'll dive into this a little deeper. If I may bring it back to one question I had for your book. How has the response been so far about the book?
I think pretty good. It's because it's written in Mumbai and a lot of the people are contemporaries. So they identify with it. You may not, but I'm sure if your grandparents and parents were products of an institution in Delhi or Bombay, they would identify with it. And I've lived in Delhi, Kanpur, Hyderabad, Mumbai, London, and there are stories and of people all over. And many of the people who are today well known, not perhaps amongst your age group, but certainly amongst my age group, are people like Darrell de Monte. You've heard that name, I'm sure. Adil Jassamala, the great poet. Mala Sen, who wrote Bandit Queen. Farooq Dhondi, who's a very well-known writer and a columnist also, and a poet. And so these are all the people that I was brought up with. So there's a whole intellectual opening that I was imbibing from them. I can't say that I came from a family which had that kind of learning, but I learned a great deal from the areas that were open to me and which were opportunities given to me by my parents.
Great. Well, it's been lovely chatting with you all by myself. But we do have a bunch of really talented young theatre makers who I'd like to also invite onto the panel so that they can also ask you their questions and share some of their thoughts about, well, all things theatre. So I'd like to invite our panel of young theatre makers. We have with us Abhimanyu Nair, a theatre maker from Trivandrum, Gargi Datar, a Kathak dancer and actor from Pune, Gouri Bhuyan, an industrial psychologist turned theatre maker from Mumbai, and Kokila Mohini Beri, writer and performer based in Mumbai. Please do unmute yourselves, everybody. And as you can see, everyone, that our panel is spread across the country. And Dolly Auntie, you too have traveled quite a bit as a child. Growing up, you were in Delhi and Hyderabad. And
since you mentioned Trivandrum,
yes,
I can't remember the name of the director, but I went to Trivandrum and I was very active with a very famous, I'm sorry, my memory has now faded a little, but from the National School of Drama, who ran a whole institute in Trivandrum, and I used to go and see his plays. Abhimanyu, you're too young, but if your memory goes further back.
Is it Mariama, ma'am? Is a play called Mariama?
Not so much the play as the director or the group that runs theatre. But as I said, I've never stopped myself from going into any theatre area, whether I knew the people or not, and I made myself known to everybody. And I think most of them knew who I was. And so I've interacted with people there. When I went to Cochin for the art biennale that was held, I went again to see a play. There was I in Cochin for the art thing. And but theatre couldn't keep me away. I went to see the play. But since I was casting director, I had to go to see plays of in every region in India. So whether it was Calcutta or Trivandrum or Auroville, Pondicherry, I went and saw plays everywhere. I mean, Bangalore and all are now close. They are like home, so they were definitely there. But these are still the remote areas to which I went and I saw plays and cast people from there.
Yes, so that's exactly my point. You've been everywhere and you've so actively engaged with the theatre scene everywhere. So just wanted to ask you, has there been any significant difference in the theatre culture in each of these places that you've been a part of?
Tali, after all, remember that there's a certain discipline that one follows, say Bombay, and that is different. Now, I found Calcutta theatre very vibrant. When Shamanand Jalan was there, when Shekhar Chatterjee was there, I don't know how many of these names mean anything to you because they do belong to a different generation. But they were the greats of the time. And I've acted in The Turning Point, which is my first Zoom play, sitting on this chair. These flowers are from that play, in fact. And it's The Turning Point is a spinal cord injury. It's my first Zoom play. But there, again, I had my director in Calcutta. And his discipline of working and teaching and directing, very different from the way that one had done it. Because mind you, it was a totally different medium. We weren't face to face. Here we can touch, see the expressions and react to that. Here I was acting in mid-air. My fellow actor was sitting in Calcutta or sitting in Bangalore. In fact, the two leads were in Bangalore. And here was I sitting in this very chair, acting in a play. So, theatre is a great amalgam of everything. Then again, the South Indian method of reacting to theatre is different from the North Indian thing. But the National School of Drama brought everyone together because there, again, we had people from every community, from every class of people, every religion. And we learned, I wasn't a member of the National School of Drama, but I cast for Gandhi from the National School of Drama. And a lot of my actors, and I learned so much being there and being with them. And theatre is a great equalizer, no matter where you come from. Keep an open mind, children, and you learn so much. And you'll be a better person for it.
Absolutely. Gauri, I think Gauri has something to say.
Yes, Gauri.
Hi, Dolly Auntie. Just for everyone, this is Gauri. I actually had a question kind of on the same lines. So since Auntie, you just spoke about how you've dabbled in a multitude of professions, if I may, I was just thinking about how today as a theatre artist, we often feel the pressure to kind of be very unidimensional because that's how success is defined nowadays, as being a consistent profession and just sticking to that profession. But even today, as theatre artists, we do have to dabble in various things, whether that's writing, voiceover, being a voiceover artist.
You mean the opportunities that a theatre person gets?
Absolutely. Yes. And the fact that, very often, and I think I've experienced this personally, where I've probably evaded an opportunity just because I feel like it would lead me on a path that may not be purely theatrical, just because I believe in my head that I am a theatre artist and therefore must do everything theatre related.
Gauri, let me tell you that when I was acting in school, I always wanted to play Snow White and I played the dwarf. I wanted to be Titania and I played one of those fairies running around. I never played the lead. It was only later when we did Death of a Salesman or Streetcar Named Desire, which Alec Padamsi directed, that I did significant parts. And yes, it's been later in college, but I also acted with Amitabh Bachchan in a play. And there I had a more important part than he had. But, it's all part of growing up. So it doesn't matter what. You're in the theatre and you learn a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
Roshan Seth, if you all have heard of Roshan Seth, who played Nehru in the Gandhi film. And I'm sure all of you must have been forced to see the Gandhi film if nothing else. He came to London to learn, to study theatre, and he was in Lambda. And the jobs we had to do when there was no job in the theatre, it was ironing clothes for the actors. So there is, just being in that ambience of theatre, of being with people, you learn, you see, you observe. And it's amazing how much you take in from experiences of that type. It's not that you become a Richard Attenborough or Sherlock Holmes or anybody just overnight like that. They've all had to work. Sir Laurence Olivier, he wasn't cast as Hamlet immediately or anything. Everybody's had to go step by step. And similarly, I've had to do that too. And so will you have to do that.
Thank you.
I mean, so don't hesitate. Theatre brings you together, binds you together, teaches you a lot of things about other people, teaches you humility, teaches you acceptance. So all your arrogance has to go out of the window. You can't come there and say, oh, I am prettier than her, and therefore I should be playing Cinderella or whatever, It doesn't happen like that. But just to be in that environment, to be on that stage, to be with the people who are teaching you how to walk, how to talk, the opportunities that are given to theatre people. When we were doing theatre, most of the people in the theatre, they had no other opportunities. Even in England, all the people that are in the theatre have to do jobs, part-time jobs, and only occasionally are they taken into for a part. Similarly, in India, now a lot of corporates are hiring theatre people to teach speech and elocution and body language and stance to communicate to their junior managers as to how to conduct themselves. And so theatre is the first stepping stone, but it's taken them places. A lot of them have given up theatre, but they are earning their money and a very good living through training other people. So that answers your question, Gauri?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I do think Gargi also had something to say.
Yeah. Hi, Dolly Auntie. Firstly,
Hi,
it's
Gargi.
great to be here. I read your book and I am very excited. I think we all had like 100 questions, so it's going to be very difficult to
Ask anything.
So you mentioned throughout the years, as in your journey as a casting director, as a reviewer, and all of this, you ended up interacting with a lot of actors, seeing a lot of different people on stage and off stage. Even the kind of people that you casted in Gandhi, right? So my question was, a lot of them were professionally trained, like you mentioned, like from Lambda and things like that. But there were equally others who didn't have any training and just, sort of learned on the job, played with their instincts. So I think of what I understand, back then, just doing theatre in itself was a struggle on its own. But now I think we've moved a little ahead from there. People are more open to the idea of formal education in theatre or in acting and things like that. So, I mean, at least our generation doesn't have that struggle as such. So how important do you think is...
Can I share something which I don't know whether it's in the book, and I hope you'll forgive me for saying that, but you've all heard of Rajat Kapoor?
Yes.
I mean, certainly the film walas and the people in the Bombay theatre will all know who Rajat Kapoor is. Now, Rajat Kapoor and I acted in a couple of plays together when I was also 25, 26 years old. And I was at the airport, and Rajat was a college student, and he was acting with me, I think, in a play called Wings or something like that. And his mother, and they were great businessmen. They owned, I think they were in the garment industry or something. And we were at the airport, and the mother turned to me and said, "My son is useless. Please tell him not to do theatre. He's wasting his time." And she's telling me that. And I said, "No, theatre is going to teach him a hell of a lot." And today, he's one of the most sought after actors in the theatre. He played Gandhi in Shyam Benegal's film Gandhi. Not in the Gandhi that I cast, but in Shyam Benegal's film, he played Gandhi. And he's in a lot of films. He's in a lot of these OTT films, and he's a very good actor. He makes his money from, I think, through acting now. So don't ever think that acting is a waste of time, that it's not going to get you places. It has given people a lot of opportunity. A lot of teachers in schools, a lot of principals, a lot, and I've already mentioned the corporate world, where a lot of them have learned, a number of them have learned deportment, poise, delivery, how to conduct conferences, all through theatre.
Absolutely. If I may add to that, actually, I was going to say that I think I've been through similar things where my parents were convinced that if I took up acting and theater, I would end up on the road smoking a pipe. But and so they packed me off to fashion college for 4 years after I finished school. And they thought that would sort of cure me of this, dream that I had. But I found ways to just be a part of theater even while I was at college. I was at college from 9 in the morning to 6:30 p.m. And then I'd have assignments all night to do, but I would still find myself on Saturday at the NCPA working as a part of their repertory because I'd somehow warmed myself into their personal repertory over there for a while. And the day I graduated, I just found everything. I took up Kathak, I took up everything I could do that was performing arts related, and I just have found my way back over here. So I think that, and also there are organizations like Thespo and things where, there really is so much happening theater related all the time that it just feels like it is something you can do today.
So there you are. What more can one say? There are opportunities at every step. And you don't only have to be the lead actor in a play. These days, look at the lighting, the costuming, the hairdressing, the designing, the stage management. There is so much, and people have become experts. So it's not just being an actor and being on stage. There are so many other avenues of jobs that you can take up. Makeup artists, dress designers, costume designers, hairdressers, you name it. And yes, Gouri.
Auntie, this is actually a question which is just coming from absolute personal curiosity. But, right at the beginning of the book, you kind of speak about how you were so starstruck when you met a lot of the great personalities you met. And strangely enough, when I read that, I remembered the first time I actually saw you on stage, and that was when you were performing the Vagina monologues. And I was absolutely in love with you. And then I think the second time I met you in person was after I performed at the Thespo First Call. And as I was leaving the auditorium, you came out and you pulled my cheeks and you said you were wonderful. And I think after you left, I stood there for 5 minutes letting that sink in. So I think this is just coming from a place where, what was the moment in your life when you kind of got over being starstruck, or did that never happen?
I'm sorry, being starstruck?
Yes.
I've never been that perfect to being starstruck. I love attention, I love compliments, and who doesn't? But I don't have a stream of people running behind me like perhaps AB has today, or a Salman Khan has, or, and I don't crave for that either. I'm very happy being where I am. And so, sorry, I missed the point?
Auntie, I was asking you what was the point in your life when you stopped being starstruck about meeting people? So
I've never been starstruck about anything.
No, sir,
I've never been starstruck.
The bit where you speak about meeting Pandit Nehru and how he meant a lot. He stood
you appreciate somebody, you like their voice, you like their walk, you like their build. But I've never been starstruck in that sense. I'm not going to follow people around and run wait for their autograph. None of that has ever happened. And when I appreciate something, I love telling that person and I love sharing it with that person. I love encouraging people. So anyone who, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a performance on stage. It could be serving a cup of coffee in the Pixie Cafe, if any of you are familiar with the Pixie Cafe in Bombay. Hello, where's it gone?
Kokila here again. Sorry, to sort of jump on something that you've spoken about a lot. I was emceeing a lit live session that you were talking to Nina Gupta in, and you said something that really stood out to me, which was that you've never been afraid. And, and today as well, you sort of advised all of us to sort of go out there and not be afraid. But I want to know what that looks like. Did you not step onto stage and feel like this unreal white hot panic going through your body? Or were you just someone who was like telling it to shut up? Or have you been someone who's like, I've just never felt that?
I don't think I've ever felt that. As I said, I stumbled on words. I may have misconstructed or misconstrued a sentence or a delivery, but that didn't faze me. And that didn't stop me from going ahead and taking part in the next show or giving up theatre or giving up acting or being front of the stage. My favorite story, which I'm sure a lot of you must be fed up of listening to, is that in a debate, in an elocution contest, there was this sentence which I had to say. It was based on the rebellion of 1857, was not a mutiny, but a war of independence. And in that, there was this thing about the bullets being greased with the fat of cows and pigs, and how the soldiers then, that was what the mutiny was about. They objected to having
have to bite it off.
Bite the bullet. And because it was the fat of cows and pigs, a lot of people objected to that, because the soldiers were all from our community. And so I stood there, and in those days we stood like this, we said, very nicely. And I said, the cows of fat and pigs, instead of the fat of cows and pigs. And I, of course, sat down, and there was an applause. And it was only at the end when Mother Provincial stood up and said, very well done, Dolly. But it is not the cows of fat and pigs, it is the fat of cows and pigs. And, and okay, for a moment, I felt, oh my God, what have I done? But that didn't mean that I wasn't going to get up on stage and say take part in another elocution or something. So we all make mistakes, kids. It doesn't matter. Never hesitate. Get up and say do whatever you have to do again. That's what rehearsals are for. That allows you to correct yourself, to make mistakes, to better yourself. So you have your whole lives ahead of you. Yes, Gargi.
We spoke about vagina monologues also in the beginning, right? And I mean, the change in context and all of that. And you mentioned that you're doing shows again in January, and it has been going on for 20 years. And a lot has happened in 20 years, right? Especially in like a shift in cultural contexts. So while performing vagina monologues, do you think have you seen a shift in the reception?
Absolutely. It has changed.
In the last 20 years?
It has changed the mindset of a lot of people. When we first started, believe it or not, we used to have mostly men attending the show. And we were a little nervous. Every time the curtain shifted, we would think that, the goons were coming in to shut down the play or put a stop to the play. None of that happened. We've had a number of political people come and see the play. It's come under false names. We've had, and you see the play, and as we claim, that no man or woman will ever be the same again. Mm-hmm. That is our byline and our selling point of the play. It really is. And we performed it in slums. We perform it in Hindi also. So we've had shows in slums, in Dharavi. And the stories that they've shared with us are amazing. So it may have been written by Eve Ensler, but we have adapted it to a situation and to an accent in Gujarati, in Farsi, English, in Bengali accent, in South Indian accent. And so it appeals to everyone. And we've traveled all over India. We've even been to Sri Lanka. So, it gives me great joy and great pride to say that I am a part of Vagina Monologue, and I continue to. We've now got 3 or 4 very young actors in it. But Bhanu and I are the oldest members, and we're still in.
Lovely. I actually would like to chime in on this bit, just thinking on the same thread. Would you say that the parts that have been written for women have changed across the years in plays?
The parts that have been written for women?
That are being written, the roles that are written for women.
In Vagina Monologue or where?
Or just throughout the year in the theatre, within the theatre?
Well, look, when we did theatre for many years, we did theatre which was Shakespeare, Oscar Wilde, George Bernard Shaw, Tennessee Williams. All those plays have been adapted and translated into Indian languages. Satish Kaushik did Death of a Salesman as Salesman Ramlal, and he did it in Hindi. Then we did, Alec did Bharat Saad, and we did it in Hindi also as the come back.
That's all right.
We've done Vagina Monologue, which in Hindi is called, again, the name slips me. But we've done everything adapted into different languages. Yes, Kokila?
Do you think we have a space? What do you think your opinion on English theatre today is in India? Because like you're speaking of...
Yes, I mentioned the names of all these great big directors that we would, playwrights that we were doing. But look at the playwrights that we have in India today.
Right.
Indian playwrights. I mean, Akash Khurana, Arya Lahiri. These are people that are very close to me, but there are Rabu Ramanathan. There are any number of writers who are writing very good plays. Shanta Gokhale. And they're all writing in English, but with Indian themes. They're all Indian themes. So no more are they Shakespeare and Hamlet and Macbeth and things. They're all writing about Indian themes. And that is why theatre is so popular. Mahesh Dattani, look at the number of plays he's done. Lilette Dubé has just done a play called Lockdown Liaison. And that is so relevant to what we are going through, the pandemic and the lockdown that we've all been suffering from. So there are any number of plays, and not just in English, they're being done in Hindustani, in Urdu, of course, there are any number. So theatre will continue to flourish as long as there are enthusiasts like me. Abhimanyu wanted to say something. Yeah. I'm sorry.
Yes, so it's okay, ma'am. So coming back to my question is about acting, ma'am. So over the years, there have been a lot of changes in the field of theatre. Apart from the technological aspects, what according to you has been a significant change, especially in the terms of acting process?
What has been the
difference in the acting process?
I didn't get that. Can somebody repeat that for me?
Absolutely.
Sorry?
I think Abhimanyu is trying to ask you if there's been a difference in the process that performances are created in the acting itself across the generations that you've been performing for.
But Abhimanyu, when I mention all these Shakespeare and American plays, British plays that we've been doing, of course we were all trying to play Lady so-and-so and Sir so-and-so. All that is gone. That is why I said Death of a Salesman, which Satish Kaushik did as Salesman Ramlal. He was one of the ordinary middle-class homes, and he played like an Indian. So the difference, there is no difference. You play the character, and we are not playing it British or American style. All that has gone out. I don't think anybody is interested in that kind of idiom anymore. So you don't have to be that. agreed if there's a play about the mutiny and you have the policeman and the soldier, then you have to dress up like some of them, perhaps. But otherwise, no. Even in the films, you can see the change that has come about. Look at all the OTT films on Prime Video and the Indian films. They're all about Indian themes and they're so relevant. And that is why they're so popular, because they're talking about us. They're not talking about a different world. They're talking about people like you and me and our parents and, our neighbors. So it's talking about contemporary times. And therefore, even the acting has changed from all that. Certainly, speak clearly, speak loudly. That will never change because you have to communicate to other people. But that doesn't mean, to speak I'm speaking in English. It's not that. I'm speaking English, but I hope that each one of you can understand what I'm saying and every word that I am saying. अगर मैं हिंदी में बोलूं तो तब भी हिंदी में बिल्कुल सफाई से बोलनी चाहिए. एक एक शब्द साफ होना चाहिए. मुंह खोल के बोलिए. एक एक शब्द सफाई से बोलिए. मुझे ज्यादा हिंदी नहीं आती, जितनी आती थी वो मैंने आपको सुना दी. मगर तो चाहे किसी भी भाषा में आप बोले, अगर आप मुंह खोल के बोले, सोच समझ के बोले, तो सबको सबकी समझ में आएगी, सबको सुनाई देगी. So
yeah, we have actually a few questions now that have come in from the audience that's watching us. So Samiha has said, what advice would you give to young women looking to make a space for themselves in theatre?
Join a theatre group. Go and see plays. Don't hesitate from going up to the director or the actor and say you want to be in the theatre. You're not going to be cast as Juliet immediately. But you will be join the theatre. And once you're part of that group, it's amazing what part you might get. You might only be called upon to serve a cup of tea. But gradually, the parts will get bigger and bigger. You will get familiar with the stage, the movement, body language, the people in it. So, take it up, get an opportunity. If you're really keen, go to the theatre, see as many plays as you can, go up to the director and say you want to be in the play. And that's happened a number of times. I mean, I get this at the Prithvi Theatre all the time, or at the NCPA where people come. But I'm only familiar with these theatres because I live in Mumbai. But this exists everywhere.
Absolutely. I'd actually also, since we have a bunch of young women on this panel who are pursuing theatre today, I'd also like to open that up to you. How are you going about navigating your journey within the theatre?
I think you just have to put yourself out there. Like Dolly Auntie said, you just have to take that leap of faith and put yourself out there and not be scared of being rejected, because our profession is 99% rejection and then something works out. So you just have to keep at it. And I think just accept that that's just a part of your life now. And
you guys are very lucky. You've got platforms like, I'm sorry to repeat it, but Thespo, where it's giving an opportunity to the under 25. And so you have that platform to get an entry into whichever form of theatre you want. And you learn lighting, and you learn sound, and you learn technicalities, and you learn stage management, you learn production. Everything is there for you to pick and choose and do what you want. And I'm saying Thespo because this is a Thespo event, but otherwise Aquarius, which is is called Aquarius. Akash Purana's thing. And there are lots of other groups. I'm sorry that now I can't remember them like I used to at the tips of my fingers, but there are many, many. There's Prime Theatre, which is Lilith Dubey. There's Mahesh Dattani, who's doing a lot of work. So there is a hell of a lot of work going on. And these are only the English theatre people that I know, but there's so much happening in Pune. In fact, some of the best theatre has come out of Pune.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the winners of the Thespo Award in the last few years have been from Pune. So the world is at your feet, but you need the energy and you need the passion to go and pursue.
Absolutely. And I think Abhimanyu also has been a part of formal training within the theatre. And I think the ratios are shifting. Abhimanyu, would you like to just share a little bit about just
Sorry, I lost you.
Yeah,
I
no
lost
worries.
you there.
So Abhimanyu, you've had some formal education within the
Yes.
theatre. And could you just walk us through, since we were talking about women looking for a space within the theatre, what was the male-female ratio like there? Because I do know that that's changing now, that a lot more women have begun coming up and doing theatre. So what was it like within the formal education system?
So in my college, I studied with 17 girls and 3 guys. So like it was great. Like I mean, apart from the most of the planning about the theater process and everything came from the ladies. So the guys couldn't do that. Like it was very like interesting to watch them work and like
Were the plays that you performed did they have a lot of female parts within them?
Yes, in college, yes, there were a lot of we did a play Midsummer Night's Dream and like Medea, a Greek tragedy, which has a lot of women in it. So I think it is, so many women are coming into theater and just exploring themselves.
Look, for how many years in North India and in Maharashtra, the female parts are played by males.
Yes.
It's, all the Gujarati plays, all the Marathi plays, they all had males playing female parts. But that's all changed. It happened in the English theatre also. I mean, I'm not saying only in the languages, everywhere.
That's how Shakespeare was originally performed as well.
That's right.
Gauri, I believe you had something to share as well.
This whole conversation kind of ties into a question I did have for Dolly Auntie. So since we're talking about women in the theater and, Auntie, right before we started this session, we were also speaking about disabilities. I did not mention the fact that I myself have a disability. I'm visually impaired. And as someone trying to navigate the industry, you often look for someone you think has had a similar background, and therefore you kind of like gauge what kind of a journey you might have, although it's so vastly different for every single person. So what I wanted to ask you is that throughout your book, although you may not have addressed it directly, there is a very evident theme about identity and how, whether it was at one point you being Christian or when you went to London, the fact that you were a woman of color, the way you've written it almost seems like you're on the outside looking into a world that exists in and of itself. And very often, as a theater maker trying to kind of find my way in the industry, it often feels like that to me. Because although I have gotten a lot of acceptance from the industry, which is what attracted me to it in the first place, I still have to kind of figure out what works for me and what doesn't, because that's the only way others can help me. So in that sense, my question to you is, how did you kind of navigate this whole process and reach a point where you could make peace with the fact that you were like going to be different regardless of where you were working?
Nothing comes without effort. And you're very right. You classify yourself as minority community or whatever. And when I went to London, I was Indian, and there were very few Indians. They were all migrants. They were all migrant labor. So everyone thought that everyone who came to London was either sweeping the toilets or the platforms in the metros, etc. But there were a few educated people who had gone across, and they, again, let me tell you about Zora Sehgal. Zora Sehgal belonged to the Prithviraj Kapoor theatre group, and she was very prominent, very eminent. She went to London, but she got no job as a theatre person, so she even worked as a receptionist on an India tea board. So she was sitting there, that's, working there. Gradually, then Saeed Jaffri came. The same thing happened with him. And a few, there were a few others, like Jamila Masi and Rani Dubey and a few other people like that, Madhav Sharma, who also came to London. These were the earlier names that were popular as Indian actors. And then and I joined them also, which was in 65, I'm talking about many centuries ago now. And they were, so we formed a group called KADA, which was actually Kala Actors Dramatic Association. So, and we had rehearsals in our houses. But the plays we were doing were, again, Lorca or Yarma and, plays like that. But like-minded people got together and we had rehearsals and we met and we then held plays or whatever performances for the Indian High Commission. From there, suddenly the BBC, which was the only channel at that time, began to see that instead of casting, and all of us Indians were cast as, again, domestics working on a platform or in a hospital, or we are struck with an epidemic. And so we had 15 or 20 of us Indian actors as the people who were suffering with some disease or the other. But they gradually began to look upon us as people with talent, with people who could actually contribute. And the first contributors to that were people like Saeed Jaffri and Zora Sehgal and people. I didn't take it that seriously. I was working for the BBC, but it was great because at the BBC I was being paid £11 a week. When you did a part as a part of equity and became an actor for these films, while I was working, you got paid £28 per week per shift. And that was a hell of a lot of money. That was like almost 3 weeks' pay. So, and so a lot of Indians did that. And from there, they got recognized. And the Long Jewel, the film came along, and Shivendra Sinha was in it, and Bhushan Seth got recognized. Everybody got recognized, and that's how we Indian actors established ourselves as a contributing community to theatre. And then now, of course, there are people like, I think the name is Meera Sanyal, who at the, now perhaps 10 years ago, I went to the National Theatre and I was sitting opposite, looking up the program to say which play I should see. And I looked up and there was a big poster and it was a play called Rafta Rafta. And the face staring back at me was Harish Patel. Now, Harish Patel was a very popular Gujarati stage actor. And suddenly he'd been taken to London and he'd been cast by Meera Sanyal, I think her name was. Meera Syal. And she was directing the play. And Rafta Rafta was about Indian family marriages and, things like that. And I looked up and I saw Harish Patel staring at me in the face. So I sent a note across and I said, I'm in the audience. And he immediately said, Dolly ji, backstage, aaye, hum log dinner karenge saath. So I promptly went backstage. And he said, yahan to mitti palit kar dete hain. Because you work in the theatre from 11 in the morning till 11 at night. And you have every single day, except Mondays was their off day. And on some days they had matinees. So they had 2 shows per day. They're working, and he says, it's not like in India, in many of our theaters, the play is at 6 o'clock and your actors turning up at 5:45. I'm sure you've noticed that. And over there, no, even though the play is at 7 in the evening, you report at 11 in the morning. And you go through your lines and your costumes. And though they have every department, you're not there to check on, but everything is given to you. But still, it's like a full-time job, and you have to report at 11 in the morning. So, we don't treat theatre like a 9-to-5 job. It is happening today. Things are changing. I think a lot of it we have to thank the National School of Drama for having started that system. And there are lots of directors from there that have then gone on, like B.V. Karant in Bangalore had started that, and in Mysore he had a school, Panikkar and all these people. That theatre has also become a profession, a totally full-fledged establishment. And so the world is at your feet, children. You've got to go ahead and make it what it is.
Thank you so much, Dolly Auntie. I think that's all the time we have for today. It was lovely speaking with all of you. Thank you, Dolly Auntie, for allowing us a glimpse into your world, and for letting us understand you, as well as for allowing us to feel understood. I mean, as theatre makers, it's interesting to see how all of us across different generations are navigating similar things. And the book is actually a testament to the fact that it always pays to make a bolder choice. So thank you so much. And thank you all the panelists for being here and for sharing your thoughts. And finally, thank you everyone in the audience for watching this and for sending your questions. It was lovely to interact with all of you. We hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as we did. Do tune in to the next Thespo Book Club, Enter Stage Right with Faisal Al-Qazi tomorrow, 17th of December, 5 p.m. IST. So you can check out the rest of the festival schedule as well by clicking on the link that we're going to be dropping in the chat. So we hope to see you in many, many other places during our festival. Thank you once again. Have a lovely, dil-fully dramatic evening.
Can I just say thank you to all of you? And while I have concentrated on Mumbai and the theatre that I've been used to, tomorrow you've got Faisal Al-Qazi, who will tell you about Delhi and the great things that they do in Delhi at the theatre.
Thank you, Dolly Auntie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye. All the best to everyone.